Okay, our final What's New video is going to be a little technical. We're going to cover these four under the cover features: the new data flow engine, memory dumps, change data capture, and the merge statement. But it's not going to be great and exciting or anything. It's pretty deep and technical, and with a lot of, hey, and we're going to cover that in depth in this chapter. Let's start with the data flow engine here. In Okay, so when integration services moved from DTS in 2000 to SSIS in 2005, there was a complete redesign of the whole data flow process. I mean, everything changed, everything. So moving forward from 2005 to 2008, there was a significant change to the underlying architecture. That's basically a complete redesign of how SSIS actually goes down to the processor and requests threads and works with the processor. So what this actually means for you and I is that it's faster to run data flow. It's faster to do things in SSIS 2008 than it was in 2005. I mean, if you want the high level, that's really what it is. If you want the deep technical stuff, then very simply, SSIS 2008 can use all the processors on the system very efficiently. SSIS 2005, if you took a look at your processor usage, you would actually see a lot of times it was stumped at two. It wouldn't go beyond two processors. Doesn't matter if you're dealing with 100 gigs worth of data, you're bottlenecked at two processors because of how things work. And what we had to do was create these complex workarounds with union all transformations so that we would be able to take advantage of more processors. So you don't have to do that sort of thing anymore. I've seen numbers of 50%, 70%, 80% faster executions on the same data flow than I saw in SQL Server 2005 in specific situations. Okay, I haven't seen it across the board, but in specific situations, I've definitely seen improvements here. Memory dumps, the new memory dumps that we have, oops, typo there. The new memory dumps that we have here in SSIS relate to how to deal with it when you don't know what a package is doing. I got into this situation this past summer, right at the beginning of the summer. The production database server that Learn It First was running on had a scheduled package execution that had started like on a Saturday, and when I came in and checked it on Monday, it was still running, and normally this was a 1 hour job. So at that point I was on SSIS 2005, really struggled with what is it that I can do? How can I find out what's going on? I don't want to kill the process, but in the end, I had to. It was hung. And I was able to go through and do my diagnostics in SQL Server as a SQL DBA and figure out that it was a suspended process and it was never going to recover from the process. But what I couldn't do was find out what was going on in SSIS. And so in SQL 2008's integration services, we get these new options for how to deal with memory dumps. So basically, this was what Microsoft used internally, and they've now made it available to us. The memory dump that you're going to see, I'll show you a screenshot here in just a second, is there's two files. There's the mdump, and then there's the TMP. We care about the TMP files because it's in text format. Okay, unless you have a binary editor that can load up these memory dump tools and make sense of them, you're going to be working with the the .tmp files. Now, this is something very important to know. You need to maybe bookmark this, maybe in the PDF that accompanies this video. Make sure you make a note of this or something. This is where these dumps are located. So you will want to go verify that they're empty. You will want to have some scheduled operations that go through and look through that folder and make sure that it's not filling up. I had a client recently that had 11 gigs worth of files that were in that particular folder. That's a lot more than you should expect. You might get lucky and find there's 0 in that particular folder. The SQL Server, the SQL dumper.exe will create a memory dump when the SSIS process hangs or crashes. So that's how these files by default will get written to that folder. And that's exactly what was happening to this particular client is there it was crashing upon execution every time and nobody had been paying attention and it was logging 1 megabyte, 3 megabytes, 30 megabytes at a time and nobody had been paying any attention. So you need to monitor that particular folder. Now you can specify, you can go above and beyond. So by default, let me stop before I go onto this page. By default, there's better memory dumps done in SSIS 2008 without you having to do anything. More verbose, I believe would be the right term. There's better information in there, easier to track down what's going on. Now to this page. Additional features of SSIS 2008 are in what you can do, A, when you execute the package using dtexec.exe, or B, when you have a package that is hung, what you can actually do, or is not responding, what you can actually do. So dtexec.exe, this is how you execute SSIS packages. You can call this, it has a /dump switch that you specify which errors you want dumped. So you might notice that a particular error is happening on the server. You might have a user-defined error. And you can specify any time in this package that that error occurs, I want it dumped out to a dump file. I don't care. I don't want any other errors. I just want this one particular error. So it's very configurable. A dtutil is a utility, a data transformation utility, SSIS utility here, that allows you to pause a running package and have it create a memory dump right then. Pretty handy. I could have used that this summer when I had that hung package there. Could have figured out what it was actually hung on, what it was waiting on, what the problems were that it had encountered. So, I've got a screenshot here showing you just an example dump file that I had. I pulled up a folder and just had some of these old crash files in here. Um, Again, we only care about the TMP files because they're the only ones that we can really read. We open up, here's just some sample coming from one of the ones in that folder there. I had done in the course 157, the SSIS 2008 course for DBAs, I was showing them the data collector. And we had some problems in that one, and we're doing some troubleshooting. And when it was running the execution of the SSIS package to do the collection, it had taken those dumps and had put them here. And so you're seeing here dcexec.exe. That's the data collector. That's what executes those. And so we can see there was a lot more. Let me just tell you, these files are not small. It's almost an art to actually parsing them and figuring out what's inside them. But you can actually see just somewhat of an example of what one of these TMP files will look like for you. Let's talk about change data capture here. Let's kind of shift our gears. The change data capture, this is one of those features that's not technically an SSIS feature, but is so ubiquitous in SSIS that it kind of is. Okay, so change data capture, or CDC, as you see here. The whole purpose of this is to make it easier for us as SSIS developers to just get the changed data since a particular point. So as admins, as the SQL Server DBAs, we can flip on a switch that says, let's turn on change data capture. And then we specify a couple of things here and there, kind of outside the scope here. But what we can then do as SSIS developers is we can hook up to SQL Server and say, I want to get only the changes that have occurred since this specific point. And what it will do is it will send us a change, and we'll be able to tell whether it was an insert of a row, an update of a row, which columns were updated, for example, the delete of a row. And that way we can maintain our data warehouse or whatever storage that we need to based on what happened in the other database. Okay? So that's what change data capture is all about. Now this is only available in the enterprise and the developer editions. So we're going to use this later on in chapter 6, I believe it is, our real world packages. We're going to talk about using change data capture with integration services to do incremental load packages. Incremental load is just what I talked about. That's when you have a data warehouse and you want to populate it every night with just the changes from the previous day. Okay, that's an incremental load. Okay. So we've all dealt with any SSIS DTS developer through the years has had to deal with lots of different ways of dealing with incremental loads. It's just a common need for us to do. Where change data capture comes in handy and is different is it presents these changes to us in a table based format. And that means that you can write a select against it and you can just retrieve those things that were inserted or updated or deleted. Okay? Based on what has happened to that row, you can then pipe it to the correct transformation. I want to insert it. I want to update it. I want to delete it. Okay? So that's kind of the concept of change data capture. And like I said, we'll do that more in chapter 6. And our final one is the SQL merge statement. Again, we're not seeing massive changes. I think the biggest change that I'm interested in out of all these under the cover ones was the data flow engine changes because it makes my life easier. My packages are going to run faster now. But the rest of them, the change data capture is really interesting. However, it kind of requires you to have not rolled your own change data capture before, which I know a lot of people have already done that. So it's kind of mixed as to whether you'll actually take advantage of that or not. Anyway, back to this T-SQL merge. Again, something that was added to the database engine, the merge statement, we're able to take advantage of in the integration services world. The merge statement allows us to do multiple DML modifications in one statement. Right, so in SQL Server 2005 or in the previous versions, you had to have separate operations, separate statements for each operation. You had to have one insert, you had to have one update. Okay? We in SSIS can now use this merge statement to kind of do both an insert and an update if we want to, depending on what the values are. So I've got an example here of this is actual code. If you had the table, DBO my target table, you'd be able to run this here. Let me walk through this. I stand up sometimes when I do my videos, and so I got to sit down and get my pen back out. Sorry. So you'll notice a couple of things, and I'm probably going to refresh this page over and over again. So apologies here. It's going to probably be a little goofy. So we start out with a merge, and we're identifying to transact SQL that we want to do a merge statement. So we're defining that the target table is dbo.myTargetTable. This is the table that will be updated. Okay. All right. Now we have, if you're familiar with common table expressions, a CTE up here. So we have the using statement, and our using statement defines this up here as source. So here is the CTE that presents really, and this could be a full-blown select here. This is just for this example, going to bring back a row with two columns, column A, column B. We're going to call those product ID and product name. Okay. Now, here's the interesting piece right here, the on. This, some of you may recognize, is an equijoin. You may not know. It doesn't matter if you know, but the point is that when the source and the target have the same product ID, that's going to be considered, quote, matched, unquote. When the source and the target row have a different product ID, that's going to be considered, quote, not matched, end quote. Okay, so it's like a join. So you can see down here, now it's a basic, almost a case operator style syntax down here. When both the source and the target have the same product ID, that's what matched means, right? When they have the same product ID, then update what? Update the target and set the product name equal to the source product name. So we're performing an update. In other words, what this little section in red says is if the row is already in the target table, I want to update it. Make sense? If the row exists that has a product ID of MHL1 in the target table, I want to go ahead and update it to have this new product name. However, when they're not matched, let me switch now to blue down here, when not matched, so when there is not an MHL1 in the target table, then I want to insert it. Okay, you see the insert, and we're inserting the source product ID and product name. That's a merge statement. So now in SSIS, you and I can take advantage of this merge statement in our execute SQL tasks. We could do this in our data flow tasks. It just makes it much simpler. We don't have to have these complex data flow tasks with lots of branching logic, if this, then that, and making decisions inside of the data flow window. We can do it right here inside of the merge statement in Transact SQL. So very, very handy, very cool. That's not something that we really go into much detail in the SSIS course because it's fairly logical. The thing that's not so logical is writing the CTEs and understanding all of the Transact SQL bits, and that's why that's covered really in the SQL Server 2008 T-SQL programming course. Okay, well that's it for our tour of the What's New features in SSIS 2008. Let's jump to the next video, and I want to show you how to install the samples so that we can be ready for chapters 2, 3, 4, etc.